What's on, minifans? This is kind of a follow-up to one of my old videos where I made a cargo hauler, and someone suggested in the comments that I do a forklift to go with it, and I figured now's the time to do so. As always, if you like anything in a video, feel free to like, subscribe and ring that notification bell. Down in the description box I have some affiliate links, so I have a couple of hobby stores, one UK based and one US based, so they supply all hobby stuff and models for a decent discount. And then I also have my Amazon affiliate links for my most used items. Anyway, enough of this, let's get on to crafting. Okay, I've done a lot of preparation off camera. So what I initially did was make some templates with card and then cut those out and trace them onto chipboard, because it just made the whole process a lot easier. I needed it all to be perfect. I didn't want to print this out, so I needed it to be exact. So anyway, I've cut out everything in the 2mm chipboard, and then I start by making the arms of this forklift. So I just glue them together with Mod Podge. I seal everything as I go. Sorry, I'm a little bit off camera here. Then with like the mounting point of these arms, I've done a cross to mark the center. It's not entirely exact, but it's close enough. And then because I've glued it all together, you can see the like the joins between the chipboard. So I give it all a sand with a sanding stick. As you can see, I did print out one thing, which are these little cogs on some 1mm cardstock. So I cut these out, and these are going to get glued onto the mounting points of the arms. And then I go ahead and glue these on, and I just use Mod Podge again, and I seal it as I go. On the fork, for a bit of detail, and also to add a bit of strength, I super glue on some thinnish cable tie. I think it's about 3 or 4mm wide, and then after it's glued on, I just snip the ends off with clippers. Then on top of the cogs, I've cut some, it's about 5mm wide straw. And I've cut, I think they're about 5mm sections. And then I just glue these onto the circle on the cog with super glue. Then it's on to assembly time. So I just glue the main body together using super glue. But I leave the back off for later because I want this to match the previous cargo hauler, and the window I used like this metal mesh, so I've got a piece of that, bend it into shape, and I glue this into the front. I then add some cocktail stick at the bottom and top of that window. So I just glue it into place with super glue and then just snip off the ends. I'm not adding anything on the inside, so I just paint it all black inside so you can't see anything. For the side panels facing outwards on the tracks, I wanted to add another panel. So I got the original template, cut it down slightly, then traced that onto cardstock, cut those out, then I glue those cardstock ones onto the chipboard, just using Mod Podge, and I just do this by eye, just getting it lined up. Alrighty, on to assembling the tracks. Now, I had this one round plastic thing. I don't know what it was from, but I only had one, and it's kind of the perfect size for like the big wheels for the tracks. So what I actually did was make a mold of it and cast it in resin. And then I have the little grey things. They're from an old piece of furniture, I guess. So these all get glued onto like the track plates, and you can see I've marked it. I've masking taped them down onto my cutting board, and I've got like a barrier at the bottom so I can get the wheels all lined up properly. So I go ahead and glue all those wheels on, and then the other panel onto the top of that. And I'm just using super glue throughout, and I do use a bit of baking soda to get the joints, nice and strong. Then we're on to probably the most fiddly bit of this build, and that's putting the tracks on. So I'm just using a 1 centimeter strip of corrugated paper, and it starts kind of peeling apart, as you can see, but after getting some glue on it, it's absolutely fine. So I get this into place and just glue it on with super glue, and I also cover the whole thing in super glue to try and harden it up. There are quite a few gaps between different parts of this, so I just grab some filler and some sculpting tools and just fill all those gaps and try and get it as smooth as possible. Then after that's all dried, I give it a bit of a sand as well. It's that time, my favourite time. It's riveting time. Yes, lots of rivets on this one, as you can see. I chuck them all over the plates on the tracks and the arms, a few on top and the front of the main body. And just in case you haven't seen any of my videos, these are 1.5mm fingernail jewellery beads, and I've got a blob of blue tack on the end of a cocktail stick. Pick one up into super glue, pop it into place. Boom! Now we're making a hatch to go on top of the whole thing. So I've got this like rubber washer, which I do coat in super glue so it is nice and strong. And then I cut out a card circle, slightly smaller than it, and I use one of these circle cutting tools, which are ace. Cover that in rivets, and then for a handle, I drill a couple of holes into the rubber washer, bend a bit of wire, and glue that into place. I then glue that hatch onto the main body right at the top, and then for like the connection to the main body, I've just got a couple of bits of chipboard, bit of cocktail stick, so I glue a cocktail stick, glue the chipboard piece at the end, then I bend a piece of card round the cocktail stick so it looks like that's the attachment point, and I just glue all this on the super glue. What I'm doing now is making like an exhaust system to go on the back, slightly reminiscent of like the GW tanks, or that's what I was going for. So what I've done is cut a load of rectangles of chipboard, 2 centimeters by 1 centimeter. That's all the measuring I do here. So then I just clip off the corner of one with clippers, match it up onto another one, clip the same corner off, and then flip it over and then cut the corner again, so it's the same on each one. So I do 4 pairs of these ones, and then 3 more I do kind of in like a T shape to go in between, and then I just glue all this together with Mod Podge, and then after that I cover it in filler, sand it down so it's nice and smooth. We're on to the exhaust pipes themselves now. Now, I wasn't exactly precise with this, but it's close enough. So I put 3 dots on a bit of straw, 0.5 centimeter apart, and then drill through with a pin vise. Then do the same on the opposite side, and then so I do 4 lots of 3 holes on each kind of side of this pipe. And then after drilling them with a pin vise, I give them a bit of a file with a needle file, and then I glue in a slightly smaller piece of straw poking out the top, and I use quite a thick straw for this. And then after these are done, I glue them on top of the chipboard base we've made previously, and then I glue this to the back of, you know, the main body. I now make 2 very simple ladder sections to go on the back next to those exhausts. Whew, health and safety right there. But what I do here, I use granny grating, and I just cut it down with scissors, and I do it 3 squares wide, and then I cut out some middle sections so you have rungs to a ladder, but the 2 end pieces I don't, and then I just bend those over, and that's what gets glued onto the main body. So I do 2 sections of these, I just glue them on with super glue, and then cover them in super glue as well to try and strengthen it. To add a bit of strength and a bit more detail to the forks, I've done a strip of chipboard. It's about 5mm by 4cm, and I glue on with Mod Podge a strip of cable tie and a strip of granny grating. And I want to make some hydraulics for the arms. So I've got a length of barbecue skewer, which one end I've cut at an angle, so that sits at the bottom of the arms. And then I've got this bendy pipe, which fits perfectly over this. So I just glue all this on with super glue, and I actually fill the sort of bendy pipe with super glue, so it's nice and strong. Then I go ahead and glue that piece to strengthen it on to both the arms, just using super glue, and I use my cutting mat to make sure it's all straight. We're now on to proper assembly. So I use the cutting mat again to make sure everything's lined up, and I put the main body on a couple of bits of chipboard because I want it slightly off the ground, and then I just line up the track on the side, glue it on with a copious amount of super glue, do the same with the other side, and then do a very similar thing to get the forks on. I sort of wedge them up with a bit of chipboard and also a sanding stick apparently, and then just glue those on with super glue. I want some kind of cable to go from the arm mounts to the main body. So what I've done, I've just cut a couple of pieces of chipboard which I layer with Mod Podge, just glue them together. Bit of granny grating on the outside for a bit of detail. These get glued onto the main body, and then I've just got some old speaker cable, dual speaker cable, and I stuff that into the same sort of bendy straw that I used for the hydraulics, because it molds around so it looks kind of cool. And then I just glue this onto that little box we've just added, and then the other end onto the arm mount. That's the build done, so we're on to painting now. I've primed everything black, and I did use an airbrush for this because to get into the tracks, inside the tracks, no chance with a brush. And then after that had dried, I gave it a base coat of burnt umber, and then did heavy dry brush of dark silver, light dry brush of light silver, and then we're actually on to painting proper. So what I've actually done is masked off some parts which I want still to be silver, and then I sponge on flesh tone, then once that's dried, sponge on yellow. I do use an old brush as well on like some of the hard to get to areas. Sorry for a touch of the old auto-focusing. I thought I got rid of this, but it seems to happen occasionally. But anyway, I paint the tracks black. Then to add a touch more colour, I do the cables on the sides and the top of the hatch a sort of scratchy blue. To pick out the raised areas on the tracks, I give them a dry brush with grey. And then to try and match this with my old cargo hauler, I mask off a line on the top and sponge on white. Then we give the whole thing a once over with the homemade black wash, and I dab some of this off the yellow sections with a bit of kitchen towel. Once all that's dried, I do some rust and a bit of weathering. So I sponge on some burnt umber, and then the bits I want to be rust, I sponge on orange over the top. And then I do some staining with some inks, just, you know, all over the show. Bit of brown ink, bit of black ink. And that's the project complete. Here's some photos of the finished piece. Well pleased with this. I think it matches up nicely with the old cargo hauler I made. It's not massively strong, especially the forks. So any photos where it's carrying one of those armored containers, that's got something underneath to make sure it doesn't break. But yeah, I'm pleased with this one. Did take a while to make. Some of it was well fiddly, especially the tracks. But anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers for now.